Hello and welcome to Some of My Friends Read Comics. We've got Vance.
What's with men in tentacles? I'm sick of this shit.
We've got Chris.
My beard is full of bluebirds.
Nice. And I'm Kia. Hi, welcome to the show. Today we are talking about Rat Queens, Volume 1. It's a fun title to say, Rat Queens. First 5 issues here. Pretty more recent comic from 2012, 2013, I believe.
16?
Maybe 14. Oh, geez, I'm way off. I thought this first
13,
volume said
13.
2014. All right, so yeah.
Okay.
2013, first 5 issues. After that, we're going to talk about Squadron Supreme. We're getting into that. That's going to be our long read. So we're just going to read the first issue of Squadron Supreme, the 1984 miniseries, 12 issues. A lot to talk about there. So that might even take up like sort of the full back half of this episode. But yeah, let's start with Rat Queens, written by Curtis Wiebe and art by Roque Upchurch. It was published on Image Shadowline. It's like I guess an imprint of it.
Yeah, it's
within Image.
Yeah, Jim Valentino, who's like one of the co-founders of Image, he had this extra line called Shadowline that promised to not have any crossovers between the different series. And, you know, that doesn't make sense to me. Walking Dead's not going to cross over with Invincible or anything like that. But
Right, yeah.
but I guess like in the early days of Image, people's books were crossing over, like Savage Dragon went everywhere. So this was to say that nobody would cross over. So it's like a weird little like sub imprint. And then there's like an extra shadow line. I think it's called like Silver Line. That's like kid friendly. Silver.
Okay.
But Shadowline is based off of Jim Valentino's book Shadowhawk, which I don't know a darn thing about that, but
Yeah, it's basically Dark Claw. You know, Batman and Wolverine together, but silver, that's Shadowhawk.
Interesting. Okay. See, if you tell me that one is Shadowline and then they're going to do like an extra Silver Line, for whatever reason, Silver Line makes me just think older, like it's for old people, not for young people.
I could
think.
Like, hey, who's making comics for the 80 plus demographic? You know, that's what I want to.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like Gold Line or Reverse Mortgage Line, that would really...
That would be nice, yeah.
That way you know, if they're selling gold or reverse mortgages, you're like, okay, this is for people older than me.
Mm-hmm. The way things used to be. All right. So,
do you have too much money lying around?
Publishing. Is that what it's called? Do you have too much money lying around publishing?
Love
it. So this comic here that we're reading, Rat Queens here, is it's basically one of these types of stories that is if you are playing D&D with your friends and it's like the type of stuff you would talk about and the type of adventures you would have just kind of mixed together as if it was in the real world, kind of. It's like people are dying all throughout this comic and stuff, but it's it's just told with silly fun of like, I can't believe you let more people die than I did, ha ha ha, that kind of stuff. I don't know. It just reminds me of playing D&D.
Oh yes, it is extremely, and we'll talk about it more as we get into it. It's specifically what you would call murder hobo D&D.
Yes, yeah.
Where you're just stealing all the gold, killing everything, and then not worrying about the consequences.
Exactly, for better or worse. So this book starts off with the city council and the mayor, who they're kind of meeting about stuff, and they're like, blah blah blah. We got to get blah blah this taken care of, that taken care of. But the Rat Queens and a bunch of other groups of adventurers are having this big old brawl, causing a mess, and it interrupts the meeting. And so there's the captain of the guard. His name is Sawyer, and he says, hey, take this quest so you won't go to jail. And I'm like, you know what? That's a classic start to a D&D campaign right there.
Or Ocean's 11 movie.
Yes. We should also mention the mayor, Mayor Kane. He seems to be... Do we actually see him in this? Was he there at the beginning? I don't remember, but he'll be slightly important as well.
He gets name dropped, and so there's the Rat Queens, and then there's what 1, 2, 3,
all the
four other groups.
Yeah.
The most important of which I guess is probably the Peaches.
Mm-hmm. They're like the Rat Queens get the bad job of like clearing out the goblins from a cave. The Peaches get a nicer job where they're like, oh, bandits, yeah, we might be able to take their loot. You've got the 4 Daves.
That's my favorite team name.
Named Dave.
Yep.
Yeah, that is good stuff.
You've got the Brother Ponies.
And it's a very aggressive like D&D dungeon master name of like, what is this guy's name? I don't know, Dave.
Dave.
And what about the second one? Also Dave.
Yep.
Y'all are like, I have no D&D background, so y'all are taking out a lot more things out of this than I was. Like, I'm like, oh, this is like a kung fu movie. So we're like, this is the different, these are the different like faction groups, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like the 4 Daves, yeah. I was fine with that.
You got the brother ponies, which are very model-esque kind of gentlemen who I would assume are bronies, but I can't say for sure.
It is the full words that aren't just not the portmanteau. So
right, it's just brother ponies. Yep. And then you've got the Obsidian Darkness, which are like the goth folks. Nobody likes these groups of hooligans. They especially don't like the Rat Queens. So they all go off on their own adventures here. The Obsidian Darkness gets met with an assassin that, like, straight up slashes him to bits. The art. Okay, so we got to mention the art at this point. The art is great. The art is wonderful. It is done by apparently a real jerk of a person who got in some trouble with some domestic abuse, that kind of stuff, and got kicked off of the title partway through. There were a lot of delays with Rat Queens. It switched to a second volume, that kind of thing. So that kind of explains a lot of that. But just as a heads up, that the art is nice, but
does not excuse or validate.
Does not excuse. Yeah.
No.
So there's that to deal with. But it is beautiful. It's worth, I'm gonna talk about the art and judge the art as it is, while acknowledging that this person is a piece of shit, and maybe.
I think his backgrounds are super sparse though. It's
backgrounds.
Throughout the whole book, like there's not much background work. It's all like just the characters. And there is and this book's credit, and a lot of people have enjoyed this, and I know it's gotten, is that there's a lot of body diversity within the characters. Like nobody has the same like body type or body shape, more so than you would be used to, especially with female characters. So, and I think this book got nominated for some GLAAD awards also when it came out, and Best New Series, I want to say, the Eisners.
So we haven't actually talked about any of the Rat Queens themselves here. That seems silly of me and a terrible job of me. What am I doing?
I feel like the first
introduce all the Rat Queens.
Yeah. What are you saying, Vince?
To be fair, though, I think the first issue is not a great first issue for getting me into the series. Like it starts and doesn't really introduce the Rat Queens till a little later on, who they individually are. It starts like part way through. I'm not a fan of this first issue, but.
I feel like that might be you with teen books in general, because I think a lot of teen books do that, where they just throw you into the action and then fill in the personalities later, and just kind of, that's just kind of a typical way to get the thing moving.
Right. Mean, it is interesting that it begins with this character Sawyer, who's not a Rat Queen.
That is true. It does
introducing all right, all of you adventurers, including the Rat Queens,
exactly. That's the biggest problem. Yeah, they introduce kind of too many characters. You're right.
Or the scene's not through their lens.
Right, yeah. There's a lot of... Yeah, that's another thing this book does, that it shows you a lot of scenes where it's not focusing on the Rat Queens, and so it doesn't feel like it's about them. There's a scene that, it's a lot of dudes in shadows types of stuff, where we see something else happening. Of the Obsidian Darkness, which is like the goth group, they get murdered, like we talked about. And so we kind of are like, uh-oh, what's going on here? The Rat Queens are heading up to the goblins. They're like, hey, didn't we just clear these out a month ago? What's going on? They get attacked as well. But they're fine. Like, they can handle this assassin, no problem. The assassin starts talking some shit until it's smashed by a giant ogre. And they're like, uh-oh.
This is a good time to explain who the Rat Queens are, since we still haven't.
Yes. I still haven't. Oh, my God. Shit. So there's 4 of them. There's 4 Rat Queens. You've got the leader... essentially the leader. Sounds like she's the leader. It's Hannah. She's like a sorcerer type. And she's real, like, I don't know, just kind of like bitter. And people tend to not get along with her very much. You've got Betty, who is a little smidgen, sorry. They're like the hobbits of this world, I guess.
Halflings and D&D.
Halflings, yeah.
Yeah, she's basically like what I consider to me, she's filling the Molly from Runaways role. She's the cute, like, spunky one that's also, like, tiny, but also, like, a bruiser. Although she's got a little bit more uncouthness because she just packs, like, candy and drugs for their expedition.
Right. She actually reminds me a lot of, who was it from I Hate Fairyland?
This book is a lot of, like, I Hate Fairyland. I feel like my entire enjoyment of this book is clouded by the fact that I think I Hate Fairyland does this, like, uncouth fantasy world a lot better.
It does do it a lot better. It's a different style of fantasy.
It's a different style, yes. But there's echoes of it at the beginning that I'm like... I wish I was reading I Hate Fairyland again. Even though
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
accurate.
I do. Betty is my favorite. I'll say that right off the bat.
I mean,
yeah,
Betty also, I think, gets the most like screen time and the most chance to show off what she can do throughout these first few issues.
Yeah. But and Vince, you haven't played D&D, but halflings, their whole thing is that somehow they'll find a way to sneak attack you. You'll be in the middle, you'll be fighting 30 on 30, and they'll sneak attack someone, and you're like, how could you be sneaking attacking them? You're in the middle of a battle, and they're like, well, they're very small, you see. And they found a way to sneak up on you in a way that they get advantage.
Yep.
So that's how people play halflings, is to always do that.
Yep. We get Dee, who is the daughter of cultists.
I liked her the most. Yeah. She was my favorite.
Cthulhu-style cultist. She definitely gets the least to do, I think, in these first 5 issues. But they do touch a little bit more on her backstory later on in the volume.
It is a little weird how much they're like, can you believe it? Our god is like a Cthulhu god? And it's like, yeah, it's a D&D world. Like, I can believe it. Like, everything about this is crazy.
It's not like Han Solo, like, I believe in everything except for that crazy thing. That one's the weird one.
It's just like, everything about this is crazy. Why is a Cthulhu creature like so unbelievable? Because he's always acting like, can you believe it?
We get Violet, who is a dwarf, but she okay, so first off, I don't know what it is about characters with like red hair. I feel like your name can't be a different color. I'm sorry, that's just my rules.
That's true.
That's just my rule personally, but I will allow it for the rest of this episode here. Violet is a dwarf.
We're changing her name to Ruby.
Yeah. She is also kind of run away from home for the most part. We get more glimpses of that later, but she has shaved her beard. I think for most fantasy worlds, the dwarven women also have big giant beards, and so she's breaking tradition by shaving off her beard.
Yeah.
So they get all attacked by this giant ogre. Hannah gets her arm just straight up snapped in half, and she gets tossed away. And the rest of the team does this thing where Betty like stabs her way up to the top of the ogre, knifes out his eyes, and they win. Dee, thankfully, has some healing powers and is able to heal Hannah up with no problem. Her arm is fine. And they start going around. All the other teams were hit as well. They run into the Peaches. And the leader of the Peaches is Tizzy. They get along too well. But Braga is like a big old half-orc kind of woman. And they help her out a little bit. And so Hannah surmises it had to be the mayor. The mayor doesn't like any of them. They're trying to kill us. Everyone goes. They decide to like smash through the streets after they get drunk. They do try to go like talk it out with the captain of the guard. He's like, "Go home, y'all. It's late, but we'll figure this out tomorrow." And they just go smashing up everything. Old Lady Bernadette. I do like this character a lot. Old Lady Bernadette is a great sort of way to just have like a regular store owner and just make sure that you remember her by just like giving you this nice moment of them making fun of her age. She's like, I'm 39, and they just laugh in her face.
Yeah, they call her Old Lady Bernadette, and she's like, I'm in my 30s. Like, she is not, an old widow. I mean, she may be a widow at this point. She's 30-some years old in a world where it seems like everyone dies horribly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I just no, it's a great joke. I do like that she's like, I'm not even that, because she's drawing like even like younger than she looks like. She's supposed to be 39. Although otherwise, like, she's just like super nondescript. So I guess that's a good point, Kia, to give her like a character trait, because otherwise she's just like, oh, she's the a lot of different teams are dying. But this one happened to survive, and she's going to come back later into the plot. So
yeah. And she runs, she runs a bar, and she's super skinny. That's a red flag.
So, hangover the next day. Hannah's trying to think of a new plan to, go get to the mayor. And she does like an illusion spell. This part wasn't super clear for me. It really kind of took the end caption for me to realize what was going on.
Yeah.
Is that Hannah was pretending to be the captain of the guard to get to the mayor. So she like waltzes right into his office, but the captain of the guard's already there, and she's like, oh, shit. Well, fuck. And she gets arrested. Yeah. But right at the beginning of the next... Go ahead.
That was very disorienting for me. Because I was like, okay, what's going on here? Is that the same character? Yeah, I think it is. I think this is a thing that... a trope that I have an issue with in comic books, especially like reading issue to issue, is that character doesn't show up at any other point during this particular issue. So it's hard to, like, he hasn't been seen since the beginning of the previous issue. So, like the idea of, am I right that he doesn't show up any other time? Is that like, if you're going to like pose as a character, or he's going to be like big and important for your cliffhanger, like have him show up at another point so that you can.
Yeah, you need a little something. Yeah.
Or it has some Stan Lee narration of like, she has a great idea to impersonate Sawyer, the captain of the guard.
Right.
Yeah.
That way you're like, oh, that's what's happening.
And speaking of Sawyer, I know like Lost sometimes spoils plot points. We're like, previously on Lost, and then they'll show like a character that hasn't been seen in 3 seasons, just so you know that they exist. So then they have something. I'm like, oh, well, that person's obviously gonna figure into this plot somehow. But
no, yeah, it just feels like there was a deleted scene in here somewhere. I did really like when she's pretending to be him, walking through the office and be like, "All right, man, yeah, fill out that paperwork like you mean it." Great, I really like that.
But chapter 3, I think, is where this book like really picks up for me. Like this is I think the issue of the trade. And I think the most happens and the most like character moments happen, which is what I like.
Yeah, we do start to really get to figure out exactly what is happening here. The captain of the guard lets Hannah out of prison because they've, got some history together.
Well, they're also like, they're trying to figure out like, well, who hired us? Then he's like, the mayor didn't put y'all into a trap. Like that doesn't make any sense because the mayor, like it's like, so something else is happening. Well, maybe the mayor's lying to us. Like, no, there's got to be somebody else who like waltzed y'all into that trap. And I'm not sure who it is yet. And like, I like that he's like, he put her in prison, but he still like is like a good character. He's like a Jim Gordon type. He's like, I'm still going to like, I'll help you out and I'll help figure these things out. I like that moment. I think it's a good scene. It helps like solidify a mystery. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Betty, our little smidgen friend, goes to give some flowers to her girlfriend, whose name is Fairy. But Fairy is just like, you know what? You're hanging out with the wrong crowd. Come back when you're ready to grow up.
And she's like, they're my friends. They're not like me. And she's like, well, who you hang out with and who your friends are reflective of who you are. Which I kind of agree with, but also don't. But I like the I like that she's like, you got some toxic elements in your life that I don't want to deal with. So
yeah, I mean she does. She's taking candy and drugs on an adventure, so that's her.
And again, I love the art style, and like she looks, she's always wearing her little like battle outfits. She looks very cute in this scene because she looks like child Princess Zelda, like when she's like a 10-year-old. Like she has a huge head. Like big old ears, and like she's actually dressed up to like meet her girlfriend or potential girlfriend. So it's a very sweet scene, and like I said, I do like the design of Betty. That like she does have like a kid head where it's like not in proportion to the rest of her body.
Yeah, there's like it just ends up working without crossing that line and just like getting creepy and weird, which always worries me. With like I was worried about that with I Hate Fairyland as well a little bit, and it like neither of these ever seem to cross over into like weird territory, which I'm thankful about.
Yeah.
We get some scenes where they're talking about like, okay, so what are we gonna do? How are we gonna figure out who's killing us? Well, the Merchants Guild put the quests up, so let's go check with them. Do some sneaking around. This is, I think, the first scene that I'm like, okay, this is a really great scene where Betty and Dee are talking to the Merchants Guild about like, hey, we are some adventurers. We've got some money. We're thinking of, getting in business with you. What can you do for us? While Betty is scoping the place out, taking note of everything, basically being like Monk, right. Or who was that other TV detective on USA that was like Monk? Psych, that guy, Psych.
Sure.
Psych, Monk, Psych, Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, she's definitely rolling to 16 and above for perception. Yes. She's noticing all the things.
That's right. Noticing a lot of stuff. I don't know how you notice all that all at once, but she does good. And she also steals a key on her way out and reports back about all the stuff she's found that he's recently been out to see. The place is locked up pretty well, but I got a key. There's something hidden behind here. He's recently, divorced because he's not wearing his ring anymore. She's pretty good. Good at noticing stuff. We get a nice little scene with Violet and her brother coming back. Her brother's like, why'd you shave your beard? Come back. And they fight for a little while. We get Betty, talking about all that stuff. And she says, all right, tonight I'm going to go break in, steal whatever I can. and she's looking through these files. She's like, "Oh, old lady Bernadette, she's got a lot of money, but oh, geez, she did have to pay 50 gold to to repair that broken window of ours. Let me go stop by her place. I'll apologize in person, repay the debt." And she goes in there, and looking through the window, she sees an assassin in there with old lady Bernadette. It's like, oh my god! Busts through the window, breaks it again to save her, but it's not what it looks like. Old lady Bernadette hired the assassin. Oh no! She's the villain. Yikes. What a cliffhanger. What a cliffhanger. We get to chapter 4. We got... this book turns in a very different direction than what I expected it to with this issue here. I thought it was going to be all about old lady Bernadette and like a big showdown or something. No, the captain of the guard shows up and just kind of helps Betty out of that jam and kills the assassin. And then stuff starts falling out of the sky because orcs are attacking. Oh, not oaks. Ogres. Ogres are attacking. It's the girlfriend of that giant ogre they killed in the second issue. Well, she's back to get revenge on the Rat Queens for killing her boyfriend. Who was the one guy? The one guy like told they were like Gary. Gary.
Yeah, one of the Garys.
One of the Garys is like, hey. Yeah, it was the Rat Queens. They told me all about it when they were drunk. Thanks a lot, Gary. So, like overall, the fun moments of humor, they're there, and I think there's a lot of world building here that just kind of needs to get done with this book before it can really hit the ground running. I don't think it did like all the world building as great as it could, but I do like all of it that's starting to come in and fill in this world. You know, like it feels like a lived-in world. But so Sawyer and Betty head back to everybody else. They're like defending the city gates, and Braga the half orc is like, hey, you know what? I like the Rat Queens. I'm gonna help. I'm gonna help y'all fight these ogres. And also one of the nice little character traits about Violet the dwarf is that like she's really trying to come up with great one-liners and is just failing at that. But is the orc's name Braga, or is that one of the Daves?
Okay. No, yeah, it's Braga.
Okay.
Who I guess we find out in the second arc is trans, but probably also part of why this won like GLAAD awards.
Well, so I also got a little confused right now because it seems like Violet is really into Braga because Braga has a great one-liner. Orcs only know one language, blood, and I'm the fucking alphabet. It's a good one-liner. And Violet's been trying to find some good ones. But then later she's like, I really like Dave and I want to get with Dave.
Dave heals her. That's why.
That's what it was. Okay. It's easy to miss a lot of this stuff throughout the book. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of fighting in this fourth issue. Like they just, it's like 10 pages, 12 pages of fighting.
Yeah, it's page count pacing is kind of off. But
It is off.
Especially, I appreciate the misdirect after the end of issue 3 where we find out that old lady Bernadette was evil. We kind of thought that was going to where the plot was going, but they spend half the issue being like, we got to fight these, goblins or whatever they're calling them.
Violet gets stabbed through the neck, and it takes a lot of healing to get her going. Hannah goes all crazy, black-eyed, filled with magic powers, wrecks everything, does a great job. We didn't really mention one of the Daves. I think has blue. Is that the one with bluebirds in his beard? Is the one who heals Violet? Yeah.
Yeah, he's the cleric of the Daves, I guess.
Yeah. You've got she's kind of healing back up, and they're arguing over like, okay, we got to go after old lady Bernadette, and they're like, no, we got to stay here and help her. And Violet wakes up and is like, all right, listen, if Betty says that old lady Bernadette will be taken care of by the town guard, then fine. They haven't seen that old lady Bernadette has already been taken care of by the Merchant's Guild guy. What's his name? Garrig. He shows up and
too close to Gary.
Yeah. And he says, hey, how'd this get back to me? I don't like this. And so he chokes her out. We don't see exactly what happens there. But I'm like, it seems like everything was kind of on the up and up on your end. Like, this lady paid y'all to put up a thing. Like, it didn't seem you did anything wrong. I don't know why you're bringing murder into the equation, but whatever.
I mean, I guess because the Rat Queens are onto him. And
yeah.
A shady character, as we find out at the end.
He is a shady character, yeah. So she wakes up and Violet says, "Listen, no more fighting. Let's throw a big party. I want to get laid," and that's it. And so there's a big party going around. Violet's got her line. There's some other dwarven women without beards. She's like, these kids, when I shave my beard, it actually meant something. I actually really look good with a beard. I might want to grow it back. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Dee is not very good at being social. Betty's girlfriend comes back and they hang out, which I don't know about that. It doesn't seem like Betty actually learned anything or grew as a character necessarily over the course of these 5 issues. Yeah. But Dee ends up leaving the party to look through those papers they stole from Garrick and sees some cultist papers that the Merchants Guild had, and is kind of remembering her past and her leaving her family and being sad about all that. And then we see Garrick has old Lady Bernadette all tied up like some kind of a sacrifice, and Captain Sawyer of the Guard, he murdered his wife, and he's like, you know what? I'm not going to forget that. And he's doing some weird cultist stuff. And that's the end of the first arc. So
I guess that's the big twist, is that it turns out the merchant guy, we found out his wife was dead earlier, and they're like, what does that have to do with anything? And Betty was like, oh, he just seems sad.
Yeah. So that's it. Again, it's not like I feel like there is a lot that happens, but it doesn't always feel like a lot in this book. It moves a little quickly, and the pacing and just kind of something about it is a little off in terms of how it's telling its story. But I read a lot of these a while back, a few years ago. I think I read the whole first volume, and I don't know, it does feel like when you read them all at once, it's just like a nice kind of lived-in world. But it's it is what it is. It's very filled with profanity, filled with gore. It's a lot of sometimes there's no joke, but it's a joke because they're cursing, which I'm not always a big fan of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of it. I don't have a whole lot else to say about this, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you guys got?
I think Vince might be on the same page as me. I thought it was okay, but I thought there was a lot of missed opportunities. One thing, especially, I know Vince doesn't like team books, and I do, but one thing I like in a team book is when you get sort of the relationship triangles and quadrangles or whatever, where it's like, oh, Elaine hates George, so if they're together alone, Elaine can't stand him. It's not a thing that people think about when they're like, oh, what's Seinfeld about? But it's just it's a fact of the show that it's just they don't get along. They need Jerry or Kramer to be there, or Elaine will just go off at him. There's nothing like that in this. There's no relationships where you really feel Hannah feels protective about Dee, or Betty feels this way about Violet. It's literally they all have their own thing, and they're all just friends, but it's in such a generic sense that you don't get a sense of what is the team dynamic here? That's to me is the big miss in the book. I like it, but it does feel like it's about 4 women that have cool things they do, and then also have backstories that are completely unrelated to each other, which I think is kind of a shame.
But I think that is just kind of a result of that whole D&D thing, that whole D&D inspired aspect of it, where you start a D&D campaign. You're already friends with the people you're playing with, so you're not necessarily thinking about, okay, how do our characters relate with each other and that kind of stuff. It's more just okay, what are our backstories? What's the adventure? Let's go kill some stuff,
Right, yeah, it does very much feel like somebody's D&D campaign. But like I said, I think it's to the detriment of the story at a certain point where you're okay, but we could have characters that stuck with us a little more if we knew, especially, Hannah's a character that I feel like there could be a lot. I mean, I play D&D. Wizard characters and mage characters are very unlikable. If you got a little bit of the rest of the group being annoyed at Hannah, that would be very easy. It's just oh yeah, she's going on about whatever spell she's doing. I don't know what that means. I just fight whatever's in front of me. Where again, anyone who's played D&D knows that the dungeon master will have 10-minute conversations about whether or not this person had prepared these spells and whether they can do this or that. And you're just come on, can we just go?
It also, thinking about that aspect of it as well, it's you think of when you're starting a D&D game and you don't necessarily like. Maybe you all take a quick second to introduce yourselves and your characters, but then it's most of the game is filled with learning about your circumstances and learning about the people that you're meeting and learning about the quests that you have to take. And so I think that's part of the problem with this book as well, is that it treats it the exact same way, and it says, hey, look at all these people you're meeting, but it forgets to introduce us to the main characters. I think that's one of the reasons I just forgot to keep talking about them at the beginning. The book doesn't focus on them a lot as individuals yet. And little by little it does come in as the book keeps going, but yeah, it kind of gets off to definitely a strange start, and it doesn't vary too much from this as it keeps on going. So yeah, that's I'm pretty much in agreement with y'all as well, but I think I've got it. Vince, anything else you want to say?
No, I think Chris really I think Chris tapped into it, because I'm like, there's something missing about this book that's just not hooking me. And I think Chris hit the nail on the head. It's just like, it's not the characters' relationships just aren't there to me. Like when we talk about like, oh, Violet was stabbed and Violet's the dwarf with the beard, but I'm like, I don't know a darn thing about Violet. I really don't. And so like I don't know much about these characters and like how they relate to each other. I think Chris really diagnosed better what I just am feeling but couldn't like articulate. So good job, Chris.
Yeah.
Maybe this gets better, but I'm not particularly interested in continuing on with this book.
Yeah, like again, it's fine. It's a perfectly fine book, and it's great that it's like every protagonist is a female, which is also great.
I bet there's the reviews I read. People are getting something out of this book that I'm not getting out of this book, and I don't know, just who it is that is part of that audience. I don't want to like say this is a terrible book. It's just not clicking with me. Absolutely.
There's a lot of other content out there these days that is also just like people playing D&D, and it's been kind of getting more and more popular the last few years, or like people doing that kind of stuff. And I'm not big into it. I don't know if you necessarily are, but this kind of feels very similar to that for me, where it does feel like I'm watching, whatever it might
like
be.
Harmon Quest, or did y'all mention?
Right,
I think y'all mentioned McElroy's have a book that's very similar.
Well, I don't think we've mentioned it, but yes, they do. They have a podcast.
Okay, like adventures.
Yeah, so that
and
kind of
something,
thing. Yeah. So it feels like that. It feels like, hey, look at us having fun.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's time for us to move on to. Oh, great! We're done with this team book. Great. Are you happy, Vince? We're on to.
Hey, here's.
Oh no!
The thing is like, and I think this is actually a good like comparison, because like this is a team book that like establishes things that I'm pretty. This is a fucking long book for one.
It's a long book. So the first issue is a double-size issue, and it's big. And it is okay. So let's talk about the Squadron Supreme. This is from 1984, 12-issue series. The Squadron Supreme was a Marvel title, and they had appeared through Marvel kind of little by little here and there, first as villains, as the Squadron Sinister, and then like the Avengers run into them later, and they're like, wait, I thought these were bad guys, but these are like good guy versions. Okay. And then later they run into some good guys who are under the control of an evil person, and they help them out. And so, we kind of run into the Squadron Supreme here and there. But they are from their own universe. I was looking at the number, we've got our typical Marvel 616, the Squadron Supreme, they're from Universe 712, at least the ones that we have kind of been visiting the most often.
Okay.
But this is the first time they're getting their big old main series, written by Mark Gruenwald with art by Bob Hall. I think they do change artists later. But they kind of just pick up from right there. And there is a lot of backstory in this book, but it doesn't just dive right into the backstory. I do think it does a pretty good job of, giving it to the reader gradually. But it can be a lot of it. So this might be a tough book to talk about. The most important thing to mention is that it's basically the Justice League.
Yes.
They are essentially Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, all those folks. But they are the Squadron Supreme versions. Well, I won't go into all of them right now. It might be easier to talk about as their personality.
Yeah, it's the Justice League written by Marvel. And then, Chris, right. I know we've talked offline about this before, is that it's also coming out around the same time as Watchmen and accomplishing a lot of similar things, where it's taking the superhero concept but then like extrapolating it out into the real world a little more so than a typical superhero comic would, specifically with the DC archetypes.
A year before Watchmen, we should
Oh,
say.
really? Okay.
A year before Watchmen. The first issue, let's just start off. It really just we're kind of going in with like, okay, who are these people? What is their status quo? At the beginning, they're right now split into 3 teams that are kind of going around doing their thing. One of the little teams, or one of the little groups, split off, has Hyperion, and Hyperion is like the main Superman character of this book. He's going to be one of our main characters, I'm guessing. I have read this before, but I don't remember it at all. But their old space station out in space has been all messed up from recent events, and it's falling out of the sky, and they're trying to make sure it doesn't cause a lot of damage. There's another superhero group that's run into some looters, because they're like, they're looting this truck of food. And there's this great old guy who's just like shouting back at them, like, "Oh, all we want is a loaf of bread to feed our starving families. Bless you." I liked him a lot.
I like that. The first scene is basically like it's the JLA watchtower falling out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, so it's a logical extrapolation of what would possibly happen in a Justice League world. And then this like looters thing, and I really like this scene because they're basically like we're starving, we've lost our jobs, we can't do this thing, and the heroes are like, what are we supposed to like? And then they're just like, let's just walk away, guys. We were never here.
Right? Yeah, it's fine.
Like,
and then the cops show up and just start shooting at the people, taking
then
bread.
I'm like, woof, okay, well, I couldn't tell if it was the cops or just some civilians who were running around wanting to play cop.
That's what I was thinking,
which is
especially
topical.
With topical events,
And like,
but
I
I think somebody also mentions in this looting group that, like, careful, it's the government's agents, the Squadron Supreme there. And they're like, yeah, but not really. Like, it's okay. There's another group that's flying back in like a jet thing, and they see this. It's like a power plant on fire, and Tom Thumb, he's there, and he's like, hey, we gotta stop in there to make sure it's under control. This could cause a lot of damage if it goes off. Tom Thumb almost dies in the fire, so he's like real tired afterwards. He's like, oh, you take over, you drive.
I'm just gonna call them by their DC names. The Atom.
The Atom, that's who Tom Thumb is. Okay, he's not that tiny. He's not as small as the Atom.
No, he's just like he's the size of a smidgen instead of being like the size of an action figure.
But they're like, I don't know, like we're not really like take out fire kind of people. I also like how this feels very, very today, which is kind of sad that it's 84. It was like, there's nobody in wherever this fire is going to think because everybody's been laid off from their jobs. So it's okay. Like, I mean, there's a lot of like the economy's in shambles, the job market's in shambles. This whole world is fucked right now.
It's terrible.
They explain why at the meeting, but I guess there's we'll get to the backstory when it gets explained. What the hell's going on?
But it really does a nice job so far of just like pulling you in and like getting you to lean in and be like, all right, what is going on here? Why is everything so bad?
But it's also that classic thing that like I remember when you first start reading comics and you get kind of like smart about comics a few years into like, well, what if this is in the real world? Why aren't the heroes just like stopping like pollution and like they wouldn't be able to stop a fire, like that's or like help with poverty, like, and I'm like, okay, so we put the Justice League against all these things, and that to me is already like pretty interesting before we even get to like the backstory and then like it's hooked me in, and I feel like the fact that they are just like Justice League analogs and archetypes latched me in really quickly, knowing that.
It does help you just kind of know who everybody is right off the bat a little bit. Yeah,
it's like this is the Wonder Woman one, this is the Superman, this guy kind of looks like Batman, I bet he's the Batman archetype. Oh, there's nothing different about him, there's no wrinkle? No, he's Batman. Okay, cool.
I was going to say, later. That's President Batman to you?
Yeah. That's basically the main thing they kind of start to talk about is that when they start filling in this backstory, it does get a little complex. I didn't expect so much of it. I'd forgotten about all this, but the backstory is that the Squadron Supreme gets taken over by the Overmind.
Well, Batman decided to be president. Batman ran for Congress.
Yes. The Batman is Nighthawk. We should start trying to use their names because, like, some of these characters do show up in comics today here.
No, I refuse. I'm just calling them their DC version. DC can sue me over this.
That's fine. I'll do my best to keep things linked together here. Nighthawk is Kyle Richmond, and he is president of the USA, President Batman. So he also got taken over by the Overmind. They also took over all of America's military leaders, and they declared war on the rest of the world. And that was really the main thing. Yeah, that really does. Yeah. Imagine the country with the biggest army and just having a villain deciding to
having really
rule
shitty
it.
leadership.
A terrible leadership
with everybody. And everybody hates that country. It's the stuff of fiction.
Yep. So the wizard,
a president with worms in his brain, impossible.
The wizard, who is the Flash, of course, gives us his report of running all over the rest of the world, because his speed allows him to do that while everybody else was scouting out America. And he's like, yeah, the rest of the world hates us. You've got Power Princess, who is the Wonder Woman. They really did not try at all to change a lot of these things up, like even one bit. She was
grew up on an island
utopia. Yeah.
I got called in during World War II.
Now, hold on. They do mention that their race was genetically modified by the Kree, which is interesting.
Especially,
it's very intriguing to me. Yeah,
because like it's like, oh well, there is a real Marvel Universe thing in here now, because this is
right.
Since I didn't know the backstory that these characters had appeared like previously. I was just like, okay, well, it's Marvel writing a DC analog thing. It's going to appear on its own Earth because like it clearly has to. It can't be in the 616. But why are the Kree involved and nobody else is? Like that to me is now like that's a good like layered mystery. I don't know if it'll pay off, but I'm happy to see it.
I really don't think it does. I think in my headcanon, it's just like, great, this is the Earth of this world, but on the Kree planet of that world, the Kree are still there, and they still came to Earth. It just happened to be these people that they messed with instead of the Marvel heroes that we know from 616, you know? But I don't know. Yeah, we'll see if it comes up.
She's got her own Steve Trevor, who we don't see till later this issue.
He's an old man. But Hyperion is like, you know what? I like that. We're going to make a utopia. We've got the power. Let's go heal. We'll cure disease. We'll stop poverty. We'll do all that kind of stuff. And everyone's kind of into. Go ahead.
I'm into the idea. The big wrinkle is, and I think this is my wrinkle with the whole book, is not really like a storytelling thing. It's like, but these characters, like, I wouldn't hire the people who fucked this up to fix this.
Right. That's also it's like, how are we going to convince everyone that we were just like taken over by bad guys? Like, well, we can't. We can just try to fix it, and that's it.
And
so they're like,
Batman's not a fan.
President Batman is not a fan. He says, how meaningful is a utopia if we just hand it to them? We got to let them be able to do things for themselves.
The pull up by the bootstraps argument, like Batman don't have that argument. The other arguments he have, I think, does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. The other argument I think is that like there's a middle way between like, all right, well, I guess we have to take over and like let's fix the world somewhat.
Yeah, just send the Iceman up to the polar ice caps. Y'all don't have to like establish an authoritarian dictatorship to make that happen. You don't have to to stop poverty. You don't have to like take over and kill all like criminals and be the judge, jury, and executioner of that for you 7 people. But there's a middle ground. I'm like, Batman's like, we don't have to be a dictatorship. But I'm going to resign as president. But I'm skipping ahead.
Yeah. So the other person who's not super into it is Amphibian, who's like the Aquaman, because he just lives in the ocean and he doesn't care about the humans. He just wants to hang out with dolphins.
And there's dolphins giving birth, and he talks in dolphin. I love it.
Oh yeah, that scene.
Yeah, that scene was great.
Dolphin. It's a great scene. Yeah.
And all the dolphins' names have like 7 R's in them. I really like that too. I think that's a really fun touch.
It's great. So they all take a vote. There's a lot of them. I think you said 7. I think there's more than that. And how many are there?
I think I'm getting confused with what we're going to be reading next for the next episode, because that is actually specifically called like the 7. But they're Justice League analogs.
Yeah, because there's the core Justice League, and then there's also Zatanna, and also
Arcana.
Yeah, Nuke.
Firestorm. Oh wait, we did that backwards. That's okay.
And there's even more past that. I'm forgetting.
We'll talk about all of them in a second here.
No, we won't.
Wait, we will. They all get their own scenes. So they'll vote and they all agree to it. Aquaman, Amphibian, he sticks around and is like, you know what? That's fine. I don't care, but I'll hang around. Nighthawk, President Batman, he says, no, I can't hang out with y'all anymore. Not going to do it. And so he leaves. They decide, the whole Squadron Supreme decides they're going to go on TV and unmask. Let's go take care of our individual business until then. The Hyperion scene here is my favorite, where he goes to his Lois Lane character, whatever her name was, and he's like, sorry, baby, actually, I'm an alien. I'm not going to pretend to be human anymore. This line is a line I'm going to memorize for future breakups here. I'm an alien. A relationship between us is impossible. Sorry if my desire for companionship has led you on. That's it. There you go. Nice job,
Wow.
Hyperion.
Yeah, I guess I need to use that too.
Yeah. The Wizard, he's got his family in a bunker at home. He goes to see them. Dr. Spectrum, who was like the Green Lantern character, he has nobody to tell about this stuff. He just looks through his little black book and he calls somebody. The Hawkman analog, I forget what his name was, but his dad, who was an old superhero, the American Eagle, has died and leaves him a new costume. Power Princess talks to her Trevor character.
Howard Shelton.
There we go. Golden Archer and Lady Lark. That's Green Arrow and what's
Black
her name?
Canary.
Black Canary. Thank you. They're a couple together, and they go. That's right. I like this scene a lot, where they're like walking through the block, and all the homes are like razed and like completely destroyed, and Golden Archer was like, well, maybe our house is okay. And then the next panel is like, well, I was wrong, which I really liked.
Yeah, I don't think I was expecting, and we may have even glossed over this. The first like 10 pages or whatever, they're eventually like, okay, this is a superhero world, and like President Batman got brainwashed, but this world is fucking decimated.
It's really decimated. It's like you don't see it in the beginning. It's very gradual the way it reveals it to you. That's like, holy shit, this place is bad.
Yeah, like it's not just like, oh, like everybody's lost their jobs. Everybody has just been subjected to like 2 years of like a brainiac dictatorship. Like we're just coming out of this. Like it's not good.
Yeah, and like just coming out of it, as we'll see in a second with Nighthawk. I'm like, oh, that's how close we are to this.
Right.
So Nuke, the Firestorm character, he's been shown like throughout this book as being kind of the hothead. Like he throws fireballs at the army guys who are attacking the looters. But his parents are in the hospital. He doesn't want them to know about anything, and like he doesn't want them to worry. He's like, yeah, Mom, everything's fine out there in the real world. Don't worry about it. They don't have TV in there where they're at, so they just got to believe him.
Yeah, and they also appear to have cancer, which I would assume is caused by him, incidentally.
Ooh, yeah, probably.
Yeah, because both his parents are in chemo right next to each other.
Yeah, it's unusual that both your parents are going through chemo at the same time.
Yeah. You've got Arcana, who is, she just goes visits her family in an invisible door in the woods, in an invisible house. Good job. You've got Tom Thumb, who, what does Tom Thumb do? He just like
he goes to the Justice League satellite and starts fixing it.
There we go. That's what he did. I like him a lot. He's a very nice, he reminds me of Doc from the Seven Dwarfs.
I liked Arcana because I like the Scarlet Witch, and so like her having like a secret family that's like magically hidden. I was like, this is great. I love this.
Yeah, it's got some good art there.
Yeah, and then she's mad because they're like, oh yeah, the cat told us you were coming, and she's like, that darn cat.
Giving away my secrets. You've got, so then we focus on Nighthawk, who is the president, and takes a secret entrance back to his home, which is the White House, right?
This is his Wayne Manor. I think.
Is it his Wayne Manor?
Yeah,
okay.
it's his manor.
And people are protesting outside of it. He calls I guess he calls the White House, and they're like, "We haven't heard from you in days. What's going on?"
It's like, we thought you killed
and
yourself.
I'm like, oh.
Jesus Christ.
And I'm like, oh, that's like that's the moment that really put like everything into a better frame of reference for me, where I'm just like, oh, this really is like, this has just ended, this fight with the Overmind. President hasn't even had a chance to like figure out how to tell people what's going on and what he's going to do. Hyperion comes to his window and is like, hey, can we talk about stuff? Just want to let you know doors are always open. Even though we disagree, I respect you. I would really love it if you were here to make sure that we do this the right way. If you have your reservations and that kind of thing. And, Nighthawk doesn't really say much. He's like, okay, cool. But then he goes and he finds his kryptonite. What do they call it in this book? Argonite.
Yes.
And he forges it into a bullet because they're like, this is the only thing I can do to stop all this. And so they have their big press conference where Kyle Richmond, President Batman. He says, I resign. There's no explanation for what's going on. I just got to resign. But Squadron Supreme's here. They got to say something. And President Batman's got that gun to the back of his head, to the back of, to his back. And while he's giving his speech, and he chickens out. He's like, I can't do it. Got to find another way. The panel at the end is the whole Squadron Supreme kind of demasking and revealing who they are, and it's like a big triumphant moment with like, hey, thanks for joining us. We're gonna bring in a lot of good stuff here, and Batman just not sure about all this. So yeah, that's the first issue.
I
like this a lot, man. I was worried going into it of like I liked this a lot the first time I read it, however many years ago. And I'm glad that it's holding up for me at least. It's cool. It's a cool concept, and it's executing it pretty well so far.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think knowing it doesn't make it clear like at the beginning, but I think going into the book knowing this is Marvel writing DC archetypes, I sort of trying to cover the same ground as Watchmen a year before, I think helps you like instantly get like centered into the book, especially because there's a ton of characters that are going out. And with a team book, and then the fact that like everybody for at least the first 20 pages is pretty much spot on for what you would expect out of a DC book, I think is super helpful.
For me, what it does different from Watchmen is that it just paces it and frames it like a regular superhero story.
Right.
It doesn't try to do any fancy like the newspaper articles, framing, and like all that kind of whatever. Which, don't get me wrong, that's fine. This is like just regular superhero book, but still tackling all those issues.
Right, and then I think it's really cool, and it's in like the real world, and it's dealing with like little elements. Like, we're just not gonna enforce this law against you guys. Like, we're just gonna walk away right now. There's no like real like hemming and hawing the way like Green Lantern and Green Arrow would talk about it. They just like, we're just going to walk away. And then on top of that, it's also like the fallout from an event that you don't usually see in event comics. There's been, I think was a Marvel recent series where it's like Secret Empire where Captain America was brainwashed by Hydra or whatever. They don't show that fallout of like Captain America re-earning his graces within like the Avengers book, or like Tony Stark after Civil War like re-earning his graces. Like, this seems like the whole team, like, we did some bad stuff and we've got to make amends for it, and that'd be glossed over pretty quickly in a Marvel event world. So I think that's cool.
And what's interesting, I didn't want to spoil it for y'all. Did you guys know that they're specifically referencing another story with the Overmind and taking over the planet?
Kia mentioned that in the preface. I don't think it's necessary at all.
It's really not necessary.
No, yeah, it's literally. I started reading it and it's really bad. There's a Defenders storyline that is, they go to this Earth. They get an emergency message from Hyperion that's like, everybody here hates me now. They think that I betrayed America. President Kyle Richmond has, betrayed everyone with this alien, the Overmind. And then you find out it's this like, a Cthulhu-esque character called Null that's got a bunch of tentacles. And he's actually like, they kill Kyle Richmond's body, and it turns out it's not actually Kyle Richmond. It's this weird kind of Krang suit, and this tentacle monster is inside of it. Right. And then Nighthawk, who had rejoined the Defenders recently, like gets his memories back, and he's like, "Wait a minute, I'm actually from this Earth. I'm the president." What? so he doesn't know that all this stuff happened. Like, somehow it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Great.
But
well, I'm glad they were able to use that, to jump into this.
Yeah, this is a great jumping off point where it's just like, but what kind of position are they in now that this happened? Mm-hmm. Like, that the world is completely screwed up by this horrible storyline in a Defenders comic.
Yep. So I'm to read all this again. I'm glad y'all are into it. We got 12 issues of this, maybe 13. There's like a one-shot that came a few years afterwards that was like a little bit of an epilogue. Maybe we'll read that as well, depending on how it's going. But excited to keep going with this. We didn't talk too much about the art. It's very kind of standard 80s art. Like, it never jumps out to me in general, other than that Zatanna scene with her family, which is pretty cool.
It looks like a normal comic. of the
It looks
era.
like a normal comic. Yeah, it just looks normal for the era. There's
which Watchmen doesn't as much.
Right.
So I don't know if this is quote unquote mind blowing in '85, but I was like, but it is nice because I'm like, oh, we're gonna read this mid '80s comic. Chris and Kia vouch for it, but I mean, we'll see. And I'm very happy with what I've read. I'm very happy with it.
Cool. Great. So yeah, we'll do issue 2 next time, and we are also going to be reading for our main read next time, The Boys, number 1 through 6, by Garth Ennis and Darick Robertson. This came out when it was early 2000s.
I want to say like 06 or 08 around there.
Oh, mid to late 2000s then. But it was they only printed 6 issues from Wildstorm before it got canceled and moved over to Dynamite. We've never read a Dynamite comic.
And technically we won't, I guess. But
I guess technically we won't. You're right, but we can talk about Wildstorm.
But like Wildstorm hated it so much they wouldn't make the trade, and then they let Ennis and Robertson take it to Dynamite, and Dynamite published the first volume trade. So
wow. So yeah, we'll read the first volume for 6 issues here. It is, there's a TV show of it that seems to be pretty popular, possibly better than the comic. Seems to be a trend with Garth Ennis comics here recently.
Yeah,
not going to judge it ahead of time.
Season 2, me and Kimberly watched season 1. We really enjoyed it. It's got similar like Hyperion Superman lead type character. It's like 7 characters, an Aquaman analog definitely, and they're all corporatized and they're kind of like celebrities within their world. They've got corporate sponsorships. They're the Flash does like Olympic races against other people, that kind of stuff. But of course it's Ennis, so it's going to be very dark and bleak. And and
lots of profanity.
Lots of profanity, lots of blood. I have not read the comic, but I'm assuming there's going to be like explode heads if it's Darick Robertson art.
Yeah.
The main character is kind of drawn to look like Simon Pegg, and Simon Pegg is in the series as the main character's dad because he aged out of it. But he looks. I don't know what the comic is like. I'm very excited because the season 2. I think it has been a minute since season 1 came out, but season 2 comes out this coming Friday, September 4th. So I'm excited for it.
Cool. Yeah, we'll check it out. Darick Robertson. What else is he? We talked about Garth Ennis, who's done Punisher, and we read Preacher. But Darick Robertson, was he from Transmetropolitan?
Maybe.
Or what did he do? Have we talked about him yet on the show?
I think so.
Let me see what he's in. I know him best. Yeah, he was Transmet. He did some book that I think was also written by Garth Ennis that my comic book store writer's like, you have to get this book. And I read it, and I don't even remember what it was. I don't know the title of it, but it was literally just like 8 pages of like guts and 8 issues of like pages and like guts and exploded heads, like the entire thing. So when I hear Darick Robertson, like that's what I think of. So all
right,
I can understand why Wildstorm was even like, this is a bit much for us.
He also did Happy by Grant Morrison. That's another one that I want to read as well. With that TV show. Hey, can we put Happy and Transmet on our list of stuff that maybe should get read at some point? Let's do it.
Yeah. He also replaced Mark Bagley as the penciler for New Warriors in like 1992. So probably not at the top of his resume, but but for me, that's how I knew him. I was like, oh yeah, he's that guy. And then he did a bunch of really grisly stuff later, and I was like, oh, okay.
Okay. Very good. All right. So we'll check. We're going to check out some grisly comics next time with The Boys and issue 2 of Squadron Supreme. Anything else we got to mention? Podcast stuff. What are y'all doing? What's going on?
I've got nothing to plug.
Yeah. Just surviving. There should be another Your Stupid Minds coming out soon, but I don't know if it'll be out before this episode, so I don't want to plug it yet.
Cool. I got myself a capture card. I've been making some video game videos. Nothing I'm putting online or anything yet, but thinking about just messing around with some of that stuff. Neat, pretty fun.
Neat.
Yeah. But other than that, yeah, just live back to school time. Ooh, how's back to school time going for you, Vince? With
it's actually going pretty good. They're slowly rolling people into the schedule. Where I think like the first week it was just a few check-ins and a few calls. And then the calls are getting progressively longer as we've been in it for 2 weeks now. This is week 3.
Yeah.
So they're lulling them in there. I know Bruce did get upset when they had some like break off time periods where like we're gonna have some individual time. So he lost a break, which he wasn't happy about. And I think Mondays are hardest on him. Like he's generally pretty good, and then Mondays is a lot of the crying and I can't do it kind of stuff. So I needed to remember that because we record on Sunday, so tomorrow's probably gonna be a bad day.
Have fun.
Well, if it's any consolation, like I work at the after school math thing for kids, and so thankfully a lot of our families have stuck with us and they're still around. But some of the students have just like kind of either overloaded by the Zoom time, that kind of thing. It's been tough for just parents, I think, in general, who are working but also have kids who still are going through all that. So
and kids are like us. Like we hate Mondays, and like being on a Zoom call and trying to stay focused for 8 hours a day would be a lot of ask of anybody, let alone a 6-year-old.
Yeah. Well, good luck. I hope everything goes well there. For my end, my schedule's changing. I've been doing a lot of morning work throughout this whole quarantine, but starting on Tuesday, I never have to work before noon.
Nice.
And I'm very excited about that. Back to a regular after-school schedule like we had before. Well, that's like what I've been used to for like the last few years. It's like our, we don't other than like Saturdays and Sundays. We never, at least for the time being, will not have to work a morning in a long, long time. I'm very excited about that. Maybe I'll get some stuff done in the morning. Maybe I'll prepare the images for these podcasts ahead of time so that poor Vince doesn't have to hound me down.
Check out allmyfriendsareright.here.com. He puts up an image every week, and it's always every episode, and it's always great. So
and also you can engage with us. You can comment on things and email about things, and how do people engage? Do we have a Twitter?
Not specifically for this show, and I don't know how to log into it.
We don't need a Twitter. Well, there's nothing
we do have a Facebook page that every now and then I post things about, which I was doing some research, and we haven't posted much, but I'll usually post like if there's a weird Ninja Turtles post, or if something's happened with a comic creator that we like when Steve Dillon passed, a frequent collaborator with Garth Ennis. So those kind of
Steve
things.
Dillon passed? When did that happen?
Like 4 or 5 years ago. I think we even covered we did a tribute episode.
I don't even remember that. I don't know.
I know. I was going back through. I'm like, Steve Dillon passed away. Oh my gosh, I liked him.
Well, we also got Chadwick Boseman just passed away,
which is worth
mentioning. That's crazy.
Yeah, terrible.
So sad.
I found out this morning at the newspaper at the deli.
Oh wow.
I had no idea of knowing.
I know. We were just watching a movie, and like Kimberly's like, "Holy shit, he just died!" Like such a cool guy, such a great talent. Seemed really sweet.
Very sad.
But that's a terrible way to end this episode. Yeah. We gotta, let's end it on a positive note.
That was a positive note, I guess.
That was maybe. The world is pretty terrible right now, kind of like the Squadron Supreme. But they're gonna fix it all. They're gonna take over, and it's gonna be fine. So
just give in to your dictators. Everything will be fine.
Just give in to your new dictators. This divisiveness in the country is really the big problem. We all just gotta hitch on the Trump bandwagon and call
I love
it
you,
a day.
Kia. I love you.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, never mind. That's a terrible, terrible thing to do. Don't do that. Everybody, hey, make sure you're registered to vote. Let's do that. Register to vote so that things can be better next year. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. Vince, I love you.
I love you so much.
Chris, I love you.
We're out of time.
Yeah, we are out of time. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.